What the hell's up? It's Cover 3 Media
Man,
in action. NFL draft's a couple days away. It's getting closer and closer. We're pumped. And we're joining you today to talk about just some of our draft opinions, what we're looking forward to. We're going to talk a little fantasy football, a little bit just NFL in general. We got the boys here. It's myself, Devin. We got Christian, Kraken King over there. We got Adam, NSG. How are we doing today, boys?
Dandy.
indubitably.
So, Christian, are you excited about these damn quarterbacks in this draft? These top four guys? What's going on?
Top four guys? First off, I think your top four might be a little different than my top four. I think we're going to start there. I am excited about four people in this draft. I'm really iffy on one person in this draft, and I have a dark horse as well. And then the rest of the field, kind of poop. But I'm excited about it. I definitely think some people are higher than others. I think we have some altering opinions on who's number one, but I think we have a pretty even opinion on who the top three are. And I think that that's pretty fair.
Yeah. How about you, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, there's really only three guys in that top tier. Obviously, there's the two undisputed guys who are in that top tier. I mean, the third guy, you could toss in there and maybe consider him in that tier. But I think if he isn't in that tier, he's pretty close. And the difference between him and the guy behind him, I think, is pretty large. So
I agree.
So there's been reports, obviously, Bryce Young's looking like he's going number one to Carolina. And a lot of the talk of the town was that C.J. Stroud for sure was a no-brainer for the Texans at 2. But now C.J. Stroud apparently tested really bad on that little test they do for quarterbacks, and there's some rumors going around that he might drop a little bit. So if the Colts can land this guy at 4, do you think they should grab him, or do you think they should take the risk on Anthony Richardson if you were the Colts guys?
I mean, I'll start off with CJ and just say there's been rumors going around even before this test came out that for the Texans, it was Bryce Young or bust. They want him. That's who they want. So at the end of the day, I think both parties there, if I'm CJ Stroud, obviously, the Texans do give you the opportunity to play with your boy JSN again. However, realistically, if he goes to a team that's not super good and they do okay, they might still have a chance next year at Marvin Harrison. So it might not be that big of a deal. But overall, I hope he doesn't go to the Texans. I want CJ to go to the Colts. I think that that's a perfect system for him. I think that they're not asking him to do too much right off the bat, and he'll grow into the role. I think that he would be the best QB they've had in years, and probably even better than Philip Rivers was, to be honest with you, like 3 seasons ago. And he's got a really high floor, I think, compared to everyone. I think that he's going to be good. That's why I have him at my number one, not as high of a risk.
yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, I think all these quarterbacks in this draft are, to me, they're just not. In my opinion, I think I'm worried that they're not bulletproof options. Like Caleb Williams next year, as of right now, I feel like he's a bulletproof option. Whatever the situation he goes to, he's going to make the best of it. Obviously, if he falls into a really good situation with a really good franchise history, perfect. But if he goes to a team where it's like, hey, they've got a pretty rough patch of quarterbacks in their history and they really haven't done good developing quarterbacks in the past, I still think he's a bulletproof option in that sense. And that's why I get worried about, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, especially Anthony Richardson. What situation is going to be the most beneficial for them in their career? I do think that they could use some support, and the Colts would be a great organization for that. That's why I am concerned with those top 2 picks there, the Carolina Panthers and the Houston Texans, being, that could be Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. I will say if CJ did go to Houston, I know we've talked about this before, if he does go to Houston, I feel like they got to get Jackson Smith-Njigba just to make that transition a little bit smoother. But yeah, I mean, I'm not too surprised about the testing there, Dev. With the history of Ohio State quarterbacks, like we've seen, hopefully he can break the tradition. But I just feel like it's hard to really analyze his tape sometimes, being that he's always throwing to some top talent wide receivers coming out of college. So it's really hard to make those like discerning, analysis points because of those wide receivers and the talent that they bring to the offense. So I don't know. I think if he goes to the Colts, I'm feeling pretty good with the situation and with the organization, and that they'll give him a genuine shot. But I worry about the other organizations that they're looking for a guy to make a superstar impact right away. So
I think one thing I can definitely say about CJ is if you watched him against Georgia the last 2 years, he's the only guy that's ever even come close to beating that team. And that's the closest you're getting to a real-life NFL defense in the college football era right now is that Georgia Bulldogs team. And he was this close to beating them. In that national championship game, I mean, it was a blowout. Like, it wasn't even close. And it was night and day between him and Max Duggan, who was overperforming. Not to say Duggan, at the end of the day, did not perform well because he overall, he's a great college quarterback. Definitely deserved to be up there at the top. But at the end of the day, it was night and day. When it comes to the wide receivers that he's surrounded with, I mean, it's kind of hard to say that about any top-tier quarterback right now. I mean, Bryce Young, he goes to Alabama. You're going to be surrounded by talent at the end of the day. I mean, Joe Burrow was surrounded by the greatest wide receiver room in history of college football. Ja'Marr Chase and Justin Jefferson. Those are the best two receivers in the NFL as soon as they came in. So, I mean, it's hard to say how much that impacts them. But at the same time, is it C.J. Stroud making them look good? Is it both of them are good? Is it the wide receivers are good? It's really hard to say when you go to those top-tier schools. But I think one thing people aren't realizing with C.J. Stroud is a lot of the teams that are looking at drafting him also have a need that can be taken care of in the second round, which is a center. And they could take his center in the second round from Ohio State. I believe his last name's Whippler, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
and if they take him, I think that's a really big difference because having a center that you can connect with, not just getting JSN at 12, but if the Texans were to take in the second round, Whippler as well, he drops there. That's a really big snag and really big connection as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I was going to say, just with the Texans, I mean, if they really don't want to take Stroud, I mean, do we really blame them if they just want to, wait another year to get Caleb Williams? I mean, they got a lot of needs they still need to fill on this roster. It's not very good still, so
they're not competing either way.
So I mean, I really don't blame them if they decide to all right, well, maybe they trade down from 2 if somebody wants to take Stroud or Anthony Richardson at 2 or something, and they just take a defensive guy, or maybe they just stay there and take Will Anderson or something and say, you know what, we're gonna get Caleb Williams next year. I mean, I wouldn't blame them either.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to play devil.
Yeah, they take someone good
with C.J. Stroud and just say, Joe Burrow, when he had Ja'Marr Chase, JJ, his production in college was insane. Not saying CJ didn't have insane production either, but, you're right. It does take 2 to play. Quarterback and a wide receiver to have dominant seasons sometimes, but I have a hard time because Travion Henderson still, I think, is a really good running back for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Sure. That helps in the running game. Secondly, you think Garrett Wilson, JSN, and Marvin Harrison, 3 guys who could be generational talents in the NFL, and then you sprinkle in Chris Olave and Mbuka, or however you say his name. It's just crazy. We could have 3 generational receivers. Now, JJ and Ja'Marr Chase, generational for sure, but Joey B.
I mean, generationals,
historic seasons.
Marvin Harrison's on their level for sure in terms of recruit. JSN is maybe a slight tier below, but I personally don't see Olave or Wilson. I see them as a step down. At the end of the day, they're better than what Terrace Marshall was. They're better than what the tight end of Irv Smith Jr. was. And I mean, they did have Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the backfield, which for college football, that's a great running back to have. But we can argue who had the better room. At the end of the day, definitely Ohio State had a little bit slight edge on those receivers through and through. But it's college football. Your top 2 on the outside is really what matters, and that is the most insane stack I've ever seen in my life. So
I was just gonna raise this question really quick. I feel like we haven't really addressed it too much on our page, but do you guys think this Bryce Young size, his smallness, how short he is really gonna affect him at the next level? Do you think it will a little bit? I mean, we've seen obviously everyone's just gonna compare him to Kyler Murray or Drew Brees and Russell Wilson, which have had a lot of success still for fantasy football. Maybe not as real life for Kyler, but I mean, do you guys think it's going to be a big issue? Do you think he's going to be able to overcome it pretty easily?
I think it's tough because, I'm taller than him, and that's kind of an issue. But like to say the least, when it comes to Bryce Young's size, it's not necessarily that I'm worried about his size, although he is a little bit smaller than all the guys you mentioned. Even I think it's more so the weight. Like all these guys you mentioned, they have a good amount of like stock, and when Bryce Young goes to a team, he's going to be starting day one, and that's the problem. Is he might need to put on 15, 20 pounds, and you can do that dirty way, but your tendons aren't going to grow as quick, and that just puts you up for more injuries. And each hit is going to have a bigger impact, even if he does get that weight up, it's not trained into his body just yet. It could affect his accuracy if he grows too quick. It could affect so many small little things for him where it has to be gradual. And if he was someone like an Anthony Richardson, where he comes in and he was able to play for Seattle, and he was able to be behind Geno Smith for a year or two, like Bryce Young would end up being one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I mean, with the way NFL offenses are going, he goes to a team that invests in their offensive line, and he's able to be mobile and move outside the pocket. You could be seeing someone similar to Jalen Hurts, to Justin Fields outside the pocket, but then passing the way that Drew Brees could pass, and he could very well, and that's where his ceiling really is. But the problem is, I don't know if the team that he ends up going to is going to be able to get him that opportunity.
Yeah, I can understand that for sure. I do get concerned, what the longevity of his career looks like. I think he relies a lot on, evading pressure. I think he does have a good composure in that sense, getting out of the pocket when he feels pressure and making plays happen. But the thing I got to consider for sure is, the NFL, it's the best of the best on defenses, and he's going to be going against guys who are bigger, faster, stronger than he's seen in college. And I do worry about, what does his escape look like in the NFL, and how is he playing behind those absolute monsters on the field? Like, I just imagine being 5'10", you got to be a special player to make it work behind those big offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and any big linebacker who's blitzing from the outside. So that is a concern for me. Is just being able to see through the line. I think it takes a special quarterback to be able to do that for sure.
I mean, I think too, Carolina, which you most likely will go to, I mean, they're going to really need a scheme around him, get the ball out quick. A lot of people have been comparing him, what I've been watching, to like a point guard, kind of like a Steph Curry, Trae Young kind of guy that's really a distributor with, which he definitely could be. I'm a little concerned of the weapons they really have there. They really don't have anything, which is concerning to me because they got rid of their best one to move up. So they're going to really need to get some guys in this draft to help him out because, again, maybe not at the level that Stroud had. Obviously, Alabama's top tier, but this past year they didn't really have a ton of great like receivers that are getting any draft type. But at the same time, he's still playing with guys that are top, 5-star recruits. So I'm still optimistic about Bryce Young. But again, one hit. I mean, even Kyler Murray, who's a short guy too, but he's got a lot of weight on him. He's been taking hits, getting hurt a lot too, and that he tore his ACL. I mean, because he was trying to do too much. And I mean, Bryce Young, I think, plays a lot different than him, but one hit and he could be done, and it's frightening. If I was Carolina,
I think like the best thing for his career, and this might be horrible to say, but that he tries putting on weight too early and he tears a tendon in his ACL or something early on, and he can't play next year. It sounds shitty to say, like, to wish that on someone, but in the long term, he'll then be able to sit. They'll be bad again. They'll get another high draft pick. They probably, what would happen then is they would be able to take Marvin Harrison next year and one of the top 3 picks because he would be bad. Now he's got an amazing weapon, but at the same time, then they would this year be able to invest in another lineman, and then next year invest another second rounder in the lineman. Now you're looking at Bryce Young, fully year to not only rehab but also develop, gain that weight the way that he needs to naturally, learn the playbooks, get a weapon behind him as well. I really think he's someone that would benefit more than anyone else in this league from a year. Just 1 year to be able to do everything gradually that he needs to do. And like I said, I'm just so worried about the pressure he's going to be getting from Carolina to produce early. And I'm scared it's going to be a Zach Wilson situation, at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my last remark, I don't have much else to say. I mean, I feel like Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud are, from an overall talent perspective, I think they're pretty dang close. From what I've seen, I could be wrong, just my opinion, I do feel like what I've seen from Bryce Young on tape, I got to give him a little bit of an edge. But again, with that height concern, the weight concerns, how it translates to the NFL, that's a big question mark for me. So,
All right, let's move into these other two guys at the quarterback position. I want to start with Adam because I know Adam is an absolute magician fan of this guy, AR-15, Anthony Richardson. I know we talked about maybe the Colts being a good spot for any quarterback because they got a good O-line, they got a great running game, solid defense, decent receivers. Where the hell do you want this guy to go, Adam? And why the hell shouldn't Seattle take him at 5 if he's there?
Why shouldn't they? Why should they?
Yeah, I mean, either way.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson, he's a tough one because I do think if he can pull it together and if he can be, if he can learn the game of football better from a quarterback's perspective, if he can, work on his accuracy in certain plays in certain parts of the field, I think he can really be the best quarterback in this class. I'm in love with the arm talent. I think that's something that at this age, either you got it or you don't. I mean, you can maybe make it a little bit better, but he's got an insane arm. I love the way he throws the ball in that regard, and he's got the frame to make it work in the earlier years of his career on the ground. Now, do I hope he kind of dials it back later on in his career once he starts to get older and more fragile, and he can lean on the passing game? Sure, but to go back into it, I mean, obviously, like I said before, I think Colts would be a great organization for him. I do think Seattle will be a good spot for him too, in that they have the structure for him to come in and be supported. The biggest thing about Anthony Richardson is this: we're going to have to understand that there are going to be battles with him in the passing game starting his career. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be interceptions. There's going to be bad passes. I need him to go to a team where they understand that and they work him into the system in the sense that they can let him use his legs and be productive in that way early in his career. That's where I do get a little bit concerned about the Seattle Seahawks because I don't know how that looks, letting him run the ball like he does and did in college. They really got to be accepting of that. I'm also a little bit worried about the Colts. Are they going to implement something like that as well? Now, the Colts, correct me if I'm wrong, their head coach is the offense coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. Am I correct? The ex-offense coordinator?
Yeah. Yes.
So, I mean, they just had Jalen Hurts. So if he went there, it could be a nice, easy transition for him to where a team is accepting of that play style. I do think the Carolina Panthers, a history with Cam Newton, they could also do that, but I don't see him going number 1 overall. So that's my quick take on his.
You never know. You never know. He could.
He could.
They could throw a curveball and.
Yeah.
Oof. Now, one thing I will say about Anthony Richardson that I think that we just haven't even gone into is this guy has a swagger on the field. He has a feel. He doesn't throw the ball. His arm talent. Right. It's not an aggressive throw. When Brett Favre threw the ball, it looked like he was putting every ounce of fucking effort into every single throw. This guy throws the ball and it goes the same distance with the same power, but it's effortless. And he has a touch on it, especially that deep ball that's just unmatched. I mean, we talked about his frame, his athleticism. I think that's a given. But he has a special IQ where it's almost like he reminds me slightly of Christian McCaffrey in the sense he's just a football player. Now, he plays quarterback because at the end of the day, he's got an arm talent like no other. But he has you see him out there and everything's just so instinctive to him. I think that every other aspect that people are talking about as a drawback can be learned. But the things that he has are completely natural talent and just instincts. And I really do like that. Now, with that said, and with that swagger, he's got to go to a team that implements swagger. I think of the Colts or the Seahawks. I don't think of swagger. All right? I really don't. At the end of the day, he is going to probably need to sit. You go to the Colts, you can't sit. You go to Seahawks, you can, but I don't know if they're going to utilize him the correct way. Now, I do like the idea of him playing with DK. I think that'd be a crazy duo, especially in the weight room. Holy shit! But yeah. I'm gonna tell you what. I'm gonna make a prediction here. Anthony Richardson's gonna go number 3 overall after a trade with the Las Vegas Raiders, and I think that that's the best scenario for him. Jimmy G's out there. He'll play 12 games and get hurt. And then Anthony Richardson's going to come in and show his flashes, and that's what they're going to need. He's going to have that time to develop a little bit. They have a pretty okay offensive line. It's not great, but it's not terrible. You got Josh Jacobs and you got Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow out there as veterans helping bring him up. So they're going to make up for some of his mistakes. You got someone like Devontae Adams. That's not just a generational talent. That's a Hall of Fame talent. And I think that could be something where he's able to learn a little bit, and then this next year he still has Devontae Adams, and who knows? The Vegas Raiders probably aren't going to win a lot of games this next year again because their defense needs some work. But maybe they're able to bring in another guy. If they're bad again, we always talk about the opportunity of Marvin Harrison. But there's other wide receivers as well that are just as, they're pretty good studs. And at the end of the day, get them a few weapons. They could bring in someone in the second round as well. You just never know. You could get a free agent. You could get a trade. Someone could want out. They could go get Deebo Samuel for all we know. I mean, it's just so random. And when it comes to Anthony Richardson, he's going to need that time literally just to be coached by an NFL coach to teach the IQ.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that. I think Vegas is a dark horse. I think even they could trade up to 2 or 3 to get Stroud over Anthony Richardson too. I could see that happening too. Yeah. And I mean, they do have Jacoby Myers too. So I think personally, I think they have a good enough offensive foundation. Their O-line needs some work a little bit. Defense is not good at all. But I mean, if I were them, I would trade up and get one of those guys. And then I know, like, you're talking about the swagger and everything with Seattle, but if I'm Seattle or even Detroit at 6, like, I know they got Goff and Geno Smith who had good seasons last year, but, like, do you guys really, like, not want to take a swing for the fences, like, build your offense around this guy long term? And, like, do you want to just be happy just making the playoffs? Because if I were in those organizations, I'd be willing to take a guy like Anthony Richardson. So we'll see what happens with Anthony Richardson.
I think they're just waiting for next year. I think they're just waiting for next year. There's just 7 guys.
I will say this, though. They could be waiting for next year, but I think that the Detroit Lions will probably be much closer to, well, they're going to be like a 500 team, if not a little bit better next year. I think they got the capacity for that. I do know that they need more defensive support. Maybe that's where they're going to gear their attention in this draft. But I'm kind of with Devin, man. Why not just trade up, get C.J. Stroud? I gotta be honest. How different would he be than Jared Goff?
If Texans don't want him,
and that even if the Texans, take Will Anderson at 2, and then they just trade up to 3 with the Cardinals. That's all.
I think the Texans are going to trade down. I think they will. I think they're a dark horse for Jalen Carter. I think the Seahawks are the most likely team. Although again, I think the Lions might really want Jalen Carter because they were speaking really high of him after that meeting that they had with him. So I think it's going to be really interesting. We're not even talking about the Falcons, Yeah, they got Desmond Ridder as their starter. Yeah, that sounds like a really big commitment to me.
Atlanta's interesting too. I think they could get a quarterback. It sounds like they're not gonna take one, but I mean, maybe I know he's probably staying there now, but I still think long term, the Falcons said they're not interested in him, but I feel like they're still gonna try going for Lamar just to get that Michael Vick BS going again.
Right. I mean, even Washington, they could be a dark horse making phone calls.
Yeah, if I were them, I would. I mean, I'm sorry, I just don't understand some teams that are just happy with what they have at quarterback. I'm not saying Goff and Geno Smith were bad; they had good seasons, but were they really going to take you? I mean, Goff did make the Super Bowl once, but the supporting cast around him was insane.
Yeah, and so they can either think that their supporting cast is going to be insane. I think Goff can get it done because he's a veteran. I feel like the Lions are more likely to do that route than the Seahawks. Although the Seahawks just signed him to a lot of money. So I think that they're committing with the idea that maybe this year he plays and they draft one next year and he still plays next year, and then the year after that is when they roll off. And that's what I think the timeline for Geno Smith, that makes sense. I think part of Seattle, they're pretty close to USC over there, and they've definitely taken some trips to see Caleb Williams, and I'd be infatuated with him too.
I mean, yeah, and we got to remember too, these picks the Seahawks and Lions have, they aren't their own. So it's not like the Lions, if they're going on that path that we think they're going on, they're not going to be picking at this spot again. This is the Rams pick, and the Seahawks pick. Seahawks have the Broncos pick. Broncos could be bad again, so I get that, but I just feel like if on those teams, the path they're on, are you going to be that up that early again? If that's where it's like
Seattle might. Seattle probably will. The Lions won't.
Right. Unless they suck.
I will say, we also got to think from a competition standpoint. NFL teams, as much as we think it's probably in their best interest to tank and get that franchise player, they don't all the time tank and ensure that they get that player. I think honestly, Seattle, no one does. Right, and I think Seattle, they're in a position where they're just like, hey, what better option we have other than Geno Smith right now? We gotta lock him down for 3 years if we want to be competitive. Do I personally think Geno Smith is a Super Bowl quarterback? No, but they got to lock down a player who can start on their team and be competitive for them. And that's where I do think, kind of along Christian's lines, maybe draft a guy this year, let him develop behind Geno, and if Geno's not playing good, throw him in. So I think that could be the thought process there. I know they paid Geno a good amount of money, but what were the other options out there is my question. So
they didn't have options. They probably thought they're going to suck. I mean, let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? They could trade down. They could just trade these picks away this year and push it to next year as well. Like there could genuinely be a trade where a team at the back wants to trade up. Washington doesn't really have that good of a pick. They're not going to be able to get a quarterback that they want unless they want Will Levis, which great transition here. I'm not too high on him. He's not my top 4. He's not. He has no production. Does he have, if you were to look at a picture of him, say, hey, can you do this, that? Yeah, he checks all the boxes. He checks the metrics. Yeah, why doesn't he have the production? He has had some pretty solid weapons around him. I mean, there's honestly no excuse. And when he played good teams, he was bad. And I don't know what else to say. Like, Kentucky could be part of it. They're not really like the best football team by any means. But how could you, knowing that you could have a high ceiling in Anthony Richardson, even consider taking Will Levis before him? Because he doesn't have a ceiling like that.
I know, and I'm seeing stuff that Houston everything, it's hard to believe at this time of the year because a lot of stuff's just smoke. But, like, I saw Texans low-key might be interested in Will Levis, and I'm like, that just feels like a disaster waiting to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, someone's going to bust. Probably him. If I'm them, to be honest with you, I would trade to the back of the first and just take Hendon Hooker at that point. It's an ACL. At the end of the day, people have been recovering from ACLs. When they get the right care, they do it correctly. And it seems like he's on track to do it correctly. Had he not, he would be in this conversation for a top 10 pick. So You're getting that talent at a rate that's lower and probably getting extra picks out of it. If I'm the Texans, I'm considering it.
I just cannot get on board with these mock drafts where Will Levis is going top 5. Like, there are just too many other good talents.
Top 10.
You shouldn't even be going. Yeah, no. Earliest pick, I would even slightly remotely consider taking him as number 16 to the Commanders because they need to take a shot at somebody.
Yeah.
But even then, after that, it's like I don't even like maybe Tampa, but still, I just don't.
I wouldn't mind the Vikings, honestly.
I could see that.
At least you can learn a little bit. I could see that happening.
But let me ask you this. Let me put this question out there. I think it was 2 drafts ago or 3 drafts ago now that the Packers drafted Jordan Love in the end of the first round. Would you consider, based on what we've seen, Will Levis a much better prospect than Jordan Love?
Absolutely not. Are you kidding me?
So that's where
Jordan Love, when he came out, he was looking like he still has it, in my opinion, the potential and the play style to be like a poor man's Patrick Mahomes, and that's what he plays like, and people have forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pissed he's on the Packers. I'm a Bears fan.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like I feel like when the quarterback volume when the quarterback volume is weak, teams get antsy and they draft players early. I mean, look at last year with Kenny Pickett. I mean, that was a pretty early pick. So that's just
there was no good QB last year. Really, it was hard to tell.
Yeah, and we've talked about this. If guys like Will Anderson, Jalen Carter were in last year's draft without the quarterback play, I mean, these guys would be top 5, no questions asked. And this year,
Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, no question, would have been number 1.
Yeah, and that's the point. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of Will Levis, and I just don't think he's worth taking over these defensive talents. And honestly, I wouldn't take him over a guy like JSN. I wouldn't. I think JSN's got a better future outlook, personally. So,
let me ask you this question: IDP, who are you taking? Will Anderson or Jalen Carter?
Will Anderson.
Who's more valuable?
Will Anderson for sure in my books.
I mean, it depends what format you're playing in too. So, I mean, all
right. Let me put it this way: say you take the positional advantage out of it in the sense of Will Anderson's either going to be listed as a linebacker or D-line. Like, he's not going to be both.
If Will Anderson was only a linebacker, then I would, and defensive line, like your one league dev. If it was only defensive lineman could qualify for defensive line, then I would take Jalen Carter. But like you're saying, if you're trying to just strip and just take overall better player, I do think Will Anderson could make more of an impact.
Yeah. You got to go off of who you think's going to have more sacks per year, and I think Will Anderson will. I mean, like right. Adam was saying, one of the leagues I'm in, we have to start a guy that's actually listed at D-line, like on the depth chart of the team at D-line. So like that's a league where I would value Jalen Carter more. But because if Will Anderson's listed as outside linebacker, which he probably will be, we can't play him at D-line. So that's where I'd be like, all right, well, I'm going to take Jalen Carter.
Well, that's what I was considering. It's just at the end of the day, there's scarcity in D-line. I think Will Anderson's going to be the better player, but I think that there's going to be probably 4 or 5 other players at that level with him, like Micah Parsons, TJ Watt, players like that, versus Jalen Carter, the only person, like his potential really is like Aaron Donald. It really is that high. I don't know if he's going to be that dominant, but having someone that good on the inside, Chris Jones even, if he's as dominant as that raises value a ton.
Mm-hmm. It says we only have like 6 minutes left in here, so we'll probably have to make another one, but we'll just continue going. And then when there's like a minute left, I'll just like end it.
Yeah, and then maybe we can transition to like the Bears, Packers, and then other players in the draft, and good landing spots. But
yeah,
other defense players, 2 comparables: Tyree Wilson and Myles Murphy. I don't know if you guys have had the chance to watch the tape, but what is your thoughts right off the rip? Who's going to have a better career overall, and who do you think is going to be the more impactful player for IDP?
So I see Myles Murphy, and I really do like him. Obviously, Clemson had some downtime. But overall, I think he does have a little bit slight edge in terms of like his vision and getting through the line. But Tyree Wilson's so much more athletic, and all that can be taught. You put now if I see him going somewhere like Jacksonville, Myles Murphy, I think that's a really good fit for him. I think him being next to Javon Walker would be insane, especially with the rest of that defense. I think that would push him to flourish. I think it really does depend on landing spot. So I'm excited to see. I've seen Tyree Wilson even going to Atlanta. I think that could be a pretty interesting spot too. But I think it is going to be very heavily based on landing spot and if someone can coach a little bit more IQ into Tyree.
Yeah, I think my only worry with Tyree, I like him better than Myles Murphy. I think there's just more potential, but I just get worried about these athletic guys that can kind of play all over the place sometimes because I feel like that's the new norm for the NFL. And like I'm seeing guys recently like Isaiah Simmons where it's not really working out in my opinion. They might be putting up stats or IDP, but real life they're not doing that well, and that's going to be more risk for them not to get playing time. So I think though, like Christian's saying, if Tyree goes to the right situation and they kind of lock him down in a spot and really like develop what he is good at, I think he can be insane. But again, depends where he goes. Like Atlanta needs a lot of help on defense, so I feel like that could be a good spot, but they might ask him to do almost too much, and I just don't know if that's going to be good or not. I just feel like these guys like that, it's hard to like lock them down in a spot kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm with you there too. I will say, based on what I saw on the tape, I agree. Tyree Wilson's definitely got, I think, more like explosiveness off the line. But when it comes to like physicality, I just saw Myles Murphy being a bigger boy. So yeah. I do think that it just really depends on the scheme. And I do like that Myles Murphy seems to play with more power in my mind. But they are both similar build, similar size. Again, yeah, like you guys said, it's just going to come down to what's the better fit. I feel like last year there was more of a, between Kayvon and what's his name again?
Aiden Hutchinson.
I do feel like when we compared the two, it was easier to say, okay, Hutchinson's got more skills and he's got that kind of refined game. And Kayvon was just an absolute, just a bulldog who's raw, so it was kind of hard there. It's like, do we go with the guy who's more in tune with his skills, or do we go with the guy who's got that absolute physical dominator upside? And that's where these two, it's just, I think they both got good physicality, but they also got a little bit to work on too. So
I think too, going off a little defense talk still, is guy I'm really excited to see where he ends up, and I think could be a dark horse for the Packers. We'll get into it, but Nolan Smith, man, like he's so athletic, which I think again it's a little bit worrisome sometimes that's going to translate. But he played at Georgia. Packers like taking Georgia defensive players for whatever reason, which I get. I would just watch out. I think he could end up being better than those guys. I'll be honest. Like we don't know. It's hard to predict defensive guys. Like that's not like the top guy. But Nolan Smith, like I liked what I saw. I know he's got a little injury history, but if he can stay healthy, I mean, Philadelphia at 10 too could be a potential spot for him. That they like taking those kind of guys. They lost some guys in free agency, so
I've seen a few different mocks here where people trade or teams trade up to the 5th pick to draft a quarterback, or they just go ahead and take Jalen Carter at 5 and then pairing him with Nolan Smith again. And I think that's something that we haven't really seen. There's a lot of defensive linemen that have played together, but I think that's something that would be really exciting to watch in the NFL.
Commanders do it. I mean, it works good.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, it's just not something that happens as often. And if we got that opportunity, I mean, dang. I think those two, they won a national championship together, like, back-to-back. Like, who does that?
Thanks for tuning in to our NFL Draft Breakdown Part 1. Adam, Christian, myself breaking stuff down, those 4 quarterbacks, some of these defensive studs that we're excited to see in the NFL, and it's going to affect your IDP spots in your fantasy football leagues. So give it a like, subscribe to our channel if you guys enjoyed the video, and part 2 will be coming out tomorrow where we dive more into what some of our favorite teams we want to do in the NFL draft and some of these prospects that where we want them to go that can really help the teams out, and fantasy football is which this channel is about. So appreciate you guys. See you later.